Hello team, this is Real Audio, and now I'm continuing my previous video on the breaking of my PS Audio DAC. And why am I showing the amplifier? I'm showing the amp, not the DAC, because it depends entirely on your amplifier whether you are going to hear the effects of the equipment breaking or not. And it's very easy. That's where I left off. You remember here there's a switch. I can choose between no feedback or a mere 2 dBs of feedback. That sounds next to nothing, but it's already enough to bring you to that land. So when I engage the feedback, then even at its current stage of breaking, it already has tremendous bass, a lot of high extension, and it sounds very natural without digital artifacts. So it sounds already as if it's broken in, and it sounded like that 10 hours ago. So most of the time when I was listening to it, I had it with the feedback on, and when I wanted to really tell how it's going with the break-in, I switch the feedback off, and okay, now as it breaks in with the feedback off, with zero feedback, it starts to sound more and more like as if I'm engaging the feedback. So now the level of the bass is getting closer and closer, naturalness getting closer and closer. And there's a lot of you saying now, like, then why on earth do I have the feedback switch? I should leave it on all the time, right? Because it sounds better. And it would say yes, for the break-in, equipment break-in, for those few hours, maybe a few tens of hours, yes, you definitively get an advantage. But let me tell you that once your equipment is broken in, and then you listen to it, or I'm listening to my turntable with the feedback switch off on the amplifier, it just sounds so much better, so much better. That's why I have the feedback switch on. And normally for 20 years I did not use any feedback in any of my amplifier. I religiously avoided it like the blackest black plague, because it if you add any amount of feedback, it will gradually transform the human voices from flesh and blood human beings to recorded controlled material. So yes, that's what feedback does to the sound. It makes it more controlled, and it creates a live event into a recorded material. Something that's happening right now where you are involved to something that has been recorded and is independent from you, and it's not touching your soul, it's just playing tricks on your brain. And I'm keeping the switch there because it has a double role. The role of that is basically right now, so when I'm breaking something in, when I engage it, then it's a little bit more pleasurable, makes actually a tremendous difference to hear it. But for the most part I use this switch for a very peculiar reason, which deserves a video on its own. So thank you for tuning in, and I really hope this illuminates a big aspect of the mysteries of equipment break-in, that if you have a system with an amplifier that has zero feedback, then any sort of equipment break-in will have gigantic consequences, and you can literally go from an AM radio level to the best sound you ever heard. So that was what I experienced with these big loudspeakers when I was breaking them in, after I built them. Even though these drivers have been used professionally for over 20 years, but then they were sleeping and they were in storage for a decade before I started using them. So you would say that they are truly and well broken in, but because they were inactive for a decade and this surround and the spider, they really tightened up from this use. It really needed to get broken in again, and the break-in with these big drivers was such tremendous that really, when I started using them, they sounded like the worst speakers by far that I ever built. And after several months of breaking, literally 1,000 hours plus, they sounded by far the best speakers I ever built. And the effect was not placebo. I did not get used to their sound. No, their sound completely transformed from night to day. However, if I would have used an amplifier which has really high feedback, I would have heard much less of that, and then it would have been a much more subtle change between those two states. So if you have an amplifier that uses a lot of error correction, and I would say that most of us are using amps with at least 20 dB of error correction or more, and then your equipment break-in will have much less of an impact, much less noticeable, versus having an amp that doesn't have any feedback, like this guy or this guy. Those guys do not even have a switch to make the change between a few dBs and zero feedback. So I hope this little video helps everyone to get some pointers about why you are hearing extreme break-in effects or why you are not hearing anything. And this is quite peculiar because it's not the amplifier that's breaking in. That's my deck breaking in. That's the loudspeakers breaking in. And still, it's the amp that dictates whether you hear a change in the sound, whether it's going to be noticeable or barely noticeable at all. So thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe my videos if you find them useful, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.